All right, good morning, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to our final edition in our G2U, Government to University program, sponsored by the Volker Alliance with amazing assistance from SCAG. And I want to begin by thanking our technical support, Edward Venegas, who has admitted you all into this room. I want to also thank my collaborator, Catherine Hansen. And now it's my honor to begin with the introduction of your MC, your moderator, Dr. Nancy Deng. Dr. Deng is a tenured full professor of information systems at California State University, Dominguez Hills. She received her PhD in information systems from Carnegie Mellon University and an MBA from American University in Washington, D.C. Dr. Deng moved into academia after a professional career in information technology. Her research interests include crowdsourcing, digital and social media, IS workforce, first-generation college students, and digital inclusion. Her research work has been published in top-tier peer-reviewed journals such as MIS Quarterly, Journal of Management Information Systems, Journal of the Association for Information Systems, Information Systems Journal, Decision Support Systems, IEE, Transactions on Systems, MAN, and Cybernetics, Systems Information Technology and People, and the International Journal of Project Management. That's just a sampling. There are others. In the academic community, she serves as the associate editor for 3 international peer-reviewed journals. As my colleague at California State University, Dominguez Hills, I was excited to watch her receive our 2017 Excellence in Research, Scholarship, and Creative Activity, which would seem like a no-brainer given what I just shared with you. She's also the recipient of the 2019 Mervyn M. Dimely African American and Political and Economic Institute Grant Award, and a recipient of the Spring 2019 Assigned Time for Exceptional Levels of Service to Students Award. An area where I feel, a kinship. She's a wonderful mentor of undergraduate students, and she's a wonderful leader in terms of championing anti-racism and diversity that we've been working at. And I appreciate how she brings the human element into her work in IT. Dr. Deng received the CSU DH President's Challenge Award, which shows our president feels just as strongly towards her. And she's leading with a 5 faculty member project for our president, titled Improving Diversity and Engagement for Equity and Inclusion in Higher Education, a Multifaceted Approach. At our university, Dr. Deng has served on the Faculty Senate, along with me, since spring of 2016, and provides much service to our campus. So it is my pleasure now to turn the running of the program over to my esteemed colleague, Dr. Deng.
Thank you, Tom, for such a kind introduction. Now it's my pleasure and my honor to introduce our panelists. Today we have 5 fantastic speakers on our panel for the IT career. And I would like to briefly introduce them. They are, first, Mr. Ryan Wiseman, Director of Institutional Research from California State University, Dominguez Hills, and Mr. Mohamed Al-Rawi, Chief Information Officer from the County of Los Angeles, Mr. Paul Wu, IT Manager for LA Superior Court, Ms. Monika Jim Novio, Department of State Information Management Specialist from Embassy in Port of Spain. And we also have Mr. Wendell Jose, Program Manager from the Office of the Chief Human Capital Officer, Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, U.S. Department of Homeland Security. We have a wonderful panel today, and the agenda for today's panel discussion will be, we're going to have our panelists to share with us their professional bio, basically their background, their job duties, and what a typical work they look like. They will share with us their personal stories and career paths. And they will also share with all of us their vision and this perspective about the opportunities and the challenges in IT job market, current now and in the near future. Finally, and most importantly, for those of you who are interested applicants, they will share insights and tips about how to apply for jobs at their agencies and the training process and what our early career look like. Now, without further ado, let's start with our first topic and the first set of questions. I would like to go with Ryan first. Okay, if you could kindly provide a professional bio of yourself, basically what you do, what's the nature of your position, and what a typical workday look like, if there is such a typical workday.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Dang, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak today. So my name is Ryan Weitzman. I'm the Director of Institutional Research here at California State University, Dominguez Hills. I've been within the profession, institutional research profession, for about 13 years now within the California State University system. And prior to that, I spent about 10 years in healthcare doing various information systems management and decision sciences. So as far as my professional biography, like I said, I spent about 13 years within the CSU, started off as an analyst at the chancellor's office. And then from there, I was able to obtain my master's using opportunities through the CSU to got my master's in information systems, decision sciences, and then went to Long Beach State and then served as a senior research associate. And now I'm serving as a director at Dominguez Hills. And I'm also working on my doctorate currently. Nature of my position, so my role for the university is to inform my constituents, whether that's the president of the university or faculty or outside constituents, using student and faculty data, what is helping or hindering our students, administrative barriers or what have you, all focused on student success. What can we be doing to be inclusive and equitable for our students? So I take great value in my role and how I inform the campus and my work, how that works out. Daily duties, it varies. I can be one day writing syntax and be looking at a variety of student groups, and then the next day I'll get a presidential request and be looking at maybe a $5 million grant that we're getting data for and trying to submit for. So it varies. I absolutely love it. It's a varied, it keeps me on my toes. And then, a typical workday, like I said, I could either be writing syntax or I can be going into Tableau, doing visualizations, meeting with deans and associate deans to be able to help inform decision-making, and then be able to, again, ultimately helping our students and being successful for our students.
Thank you, Ryan. Such a detailed instruction about your background and what you do. Now, let's move in from the environment of the higher education institution and to the county of Los Angeles. Next, we have Mohamed. Would you share with us your main responsibilities, what you do, and what your typical day look like for you?
Yes, thank you, Dr. Dan. Mohamed Arawi, I'm the Chief Information Officer for the Public Defender's Office at the County of Los Angeles. County of Los Angeles is the most populous county in the nation. We provide services to 10 million residents, now even more than 10 million residents. And the services we provide range from issuing a birth certificate to issuing a death certificate and everything in between, basically. We have overall about 107,000 employees across the county. But for my agency, which is the Public Defender's Office, we provide legal representation for indigent clients, which means people who can't afford, residents who can't afford having an attorney. I am the Chief Information Officer that was brought in to transform the department, which is 107 years old, and you can imagine the amount of paper that we have, and I think Paul can talk about that as well. But I was fortunate enough where there was a momentum for transformation, and we have moved our business from paper and analog pre-electricity type of a business process to fully transactional. The nature of my position as a CIO, especially in public sector, if you think of those all-in-one printers, you have to do everything. Sometimes you will have the capacity and the team to do things, and sometimes you'll have to do things solo, just like Ryan. Sometimes I have to get to my development studio and start writing code. You never know what's going to happen. I am a Cal State graduate. I have a degree in computer science. I love programming, but my job is not really programming. But that gives me a lot of, just for those who want to CS and CIS, even if you want to get into executive positions, into management positions, that foundation that you learn in school is going to be key to understand business and make the right decisions and think mathematically to make an impact. A typical day in LA County, there was a typical day before COVID. During and after COVID, there isn't. But basically, with 1,200 employees fully on like a cloud-based microservices type of applications, we make sure that the thousands of cases that we receive from courts are assigned appropriately and tracked appropriately. So we have a huge database. We have about 160 million records, and we have 700 lawyers who get assigned cases on a daily basis. Usually the ratio for the caseload for our lawyers varies between 60 to 120 cases. So it's a pretty busy office. And we make sure that they can do things effectively and accurately.
Thank you, Mohamed, for sharing with us the magnitude of the huge operation at your agency. And that also, to a certain extent, show how important that the big digital transformation project you led, right? The impact it made for the agency. Now, next we have Paul. Would you share us with more insight about what you do and at the work environment?
Hi, so my name is Paul Vu. I'm a senior manager at the LA Superior Courts. Much of what Mohamed said rings true with a lot of government agencies where we're trying to move from literally 3-decade-old technology. And for those people familiar, like COBOL, mainframe, like into something more modern. Like there are a lot of applications we have that don't even use a mouse keyboard, like it's just a keyboard interface. So we're trying to upgrade it to like Web 2.0, and even that is moving forward at a rapid rate. So a lot of it right now is just trying to pivot, especially with our work demographics, to pivot to something more modern. And it's been difficult, especially with COVID, and that really accelerated a lot of things. But yeah, back to what Mohamed said earlier, LA County is huge. It's one of the biggest in the nations, and in terms of superior courts, we are the largest in the nation. And then I think the second one by 2/3 is Orange County. Just to give you the magnitude of how large the LA courts serve in terms of people. So like usually our LA court actually would cover like 3 different eastern states. So all of our systems have to be highly customized, just because there's not many companies that service as many people as we do here with case management systems and so on and so forth. So that's just the general magnitude of it, right? And then like dealing with 3-decade-old technology, it's just a lot of work to be done. So a lot of the duties that I have is managing up and down. So I started with the jury department. I was a developer there. So my background is I was a developer when I first started back in 2004. I've just moved my way up, revamped the jury management systems. So that took a while. And then moved on to finances because everyone likes to use paper. They just started using Excel just to give you a timeline of how far back they are. So we're just trying to get a single source of truth, single database, a lot of using machine learning to do a lot of the forecasting, and then moved on to HR, which also does a lot of paper and not many digital. So when recruiting went digital, that was a big transition for HR, just in terms of how to integrate, because as many people know here, most people find their jobs online, not through newspaper or classifieds anymore. So just a integration of different recruiting platforms to our HR database. And finally, I'm huge on, the reason why I'm given these many different departments is that I'm very big on in-house application development. A lot of different government agencies usually go vendor packages, but we're large enough that most vendor packages don't fit our needs. So a lot of the times I spend a lot of time talking to various different stakeholders. They could be judges, senior executives, even sometimes regular lawyers or jurors or claimants, people that do business with the courts, to see how to best strategize our IT resources in order to serve the public more efficiently, more effectively, try to cut down that 3 to 4 months case backload down to a more manageable, like 3 to 4 weeks. So so my typical day when we're not putting out fires is meeting with stakeholders, strategizing, and meeting with my teams to make sure they're on track and they have the proper resources they need to complete their projects.
Thank you, Paul. You kind of portrayed a picture of what our challenging, IT environment for us. Definitely, it's interesting you mentioned COBOL, right? The old language. It won't be easy to convert and transform a 3-decade technology systems to a single database. Definitely applaud your effort on that. Now, next, we have heard some of the 3 panelists from the county level, from city level, state level. Now, we have 2 panelists from federal levels. And next, I'd like to turn to Ms. Monika Jane Novio. So Monika, would you share with us what do you do and what a typical day look like for you?
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you guys today. First and foremost, I'd like to say hello from Spain, Trinidad, and Tobago, where I'm currently posted. I'd also like to say happy 140th birthday to the United States Marine Corps. Immediately after this, I'll be going to the cake cutting ceremony here in Port of Spain. So if anyone is in some way to the Marine Corps, happy birthday. So a little bit about me. I'm a graduate of HBCU Coppin State University in Baltimore, Maryland. I majored in management science. From there, I obtained my master's in business administration. Currently hold a CISSP, a PMP, and studying wholeheartedly for the Federal IT Security Professional Manager certification. It's a lot of reading. I've served as a community economic development advisor and as an assistant communications manager in the United States Peace Corps. My background pretty much comprises of project management, operations, information technology, of course, and administrative experience throughout the sectors. Specifically in information technology, I support the Office of the Secretary of Defense, U.S. Air Force, the Army as a project manager, as well as a desktop support manager. And after a brief stint in the consulting world with Deloitte, supporting the U.S. Navy, working on human-centered process design, I accepted the call to join the Foreign Service in 2019, and I'm currently an information management specialist here on my first tour, as I mentioned earlier, in Port of Spain. Not bad for a first tour. The nature of the position as an IMS, I'm basically responsible for the department's information resource management and IT systems worldwide, specifically here at Port of Spain, and any subsequent posts I go to. My duties include anything from information security, information management, system management, but really above all, it's customer service. As an IT professional, there is no typical day for an IMSer, as we're referred to. We can do anything from support an ambassador's request to visiting a radio tower site, because I need to make sure it's up to par. I remember the first time I heard that I had to climb radio towers, and I was like, that was not in the job description. But nonetheless, what I've learned is it can be anything in between, and a good rule of thumb is if it has power running to it, more than likely they're going to ask the IT person about it. And so really just the other exciting aspect is having opportunities to work with the local IT and cyber community. I mean, just a couple of weeks ago, I held a cybersecurity panel as we celebrated Cyber Security Awareness Month, and got to meet with the head of the Trinidad and Tobago Cyber and Social Media Crime Unit. So pretty interesting stuff, and I'll plug more for IMSers here at the Department of State on.
Thank you, Monica. It's great to hear what exciting work environment you're dealing with, especially the cybersecurity. It's become very, very important nowadays. It's great to have you on the panel. Now, last but not least, let's hear from our Mr. Wendell Jose about the work environment at the U.S. Department of Homeland Security.
Good morning, everybody. First off, thank you. My background, I came from the United States Marine Corps. So today is our 246th birthday. We will be celebrating all day today. Happy Veterans Day to all the veterans out there as well. I'll give a little background about myself. See, I just said my military background. I have a law enforcement background where I worked at the county level, Department of Justice, and then I moved over to immigration and came to cybersecurity infrastructure. I do have an undergraduate in criminal justice. My graduate degree is in organizational leadership, and I'm actually working on my PhD in public administration. Lots of reading. The big thing about CISA, I am the program manager for student programs. So for the whole agency, so I'm in charge of 7 or 8 different programs involving recent graduates or internships. There's a lot of exciting stuff coming in for our agency. We are growing. We became our own agency in 2018. We have 700 positions available that we're trying to fill. If you are keeping up with Congress right now, cybersecurity is a very big deal. So our agency is looking at growing in the thousands. We're just waiting for confirmation from the White House and from Congress. My daily job is to talk to hiring managers and our executive staff to find people to fill our positions. As cybersecurity, we are the primary overseers of any kind of cyber attack. Right now, 5G is a big deal. They're looking at minimizing risk for 5G. Also, now with Teslas and self-driving cars, anything in toys, anything that you hook up to the internet is vulnerable. So our job is, we have a 24-hour watch floor, just like every other agency. Any cybersecurity incidents come through our watch floor, and we manage it accordingly. A lot of people come to our agency from other federal agencies. The reason why is they want to be part of cybersecurity itself. And the culture is a little different here, as in it's a little more relaxed and more programming driven. So if you want to wear a suit and tie to office, you can, but it's not a requirement. So a little different here in CISA, as we're called.
Thank you, Wendell, for sharing with us the background and what kind of the important missions the U.S. Department of Homeland Security are working on. Now, we have, as you can tell, we have 5 fantastic speakers, right? They have bring with us different backgrounds, different work environment, different challenges. Our next set of questions will be focused on their personal journeys, their stories, how they get here. Right? So the question would be like, Okay, why do you choose your career path? Describe your some sense of satisfaction or accomplishment. And I know you have touched upon some of those aspects before, but definitely we love to hear more. So I'm going to continue with Wendell. So if you could share with us your the journey, to the career path.
So, like everyone, you always want to look at and project your journey ahead of time. I've always had the drive to serve my country, starting with the Marine Corps, and then coming into the federal government. It's just a sense of accomplishment, as in you're helping, making people safe. Government has to be run by somebody, and I feel proud to be part of helping the government be what it needs to be. I can tell you there's a lot of times where I looked where I needed to refocus. Education is a very big deal, no matter where you go, because that's, like you said, it's the foundation of what you get into. No matter what background you have, education-wise, it always cross-reference with other things. Like, I'm not an engineer by trade, but I am learning a lot throughout my whole journey in my career. It always plays a big matter. Good example, some of the panel members said that when we went virtual, that is such a big deal when it comes to hiring and HR. People always want to say paper less, but it's really less paper. So, you're gonna have some type of paper wise, but everything has to go digital. And you got to realize when you go digital, there's a lot of support that needs to be put up behind that. It's not an easy task. So you're running into the programmers, you're running into the project managers, you're running into everything. Because, like on our personal cell phone, like AT&T or T-Mobile remind me I had to pay my 99 cents for more gigabytes to hold my information on my phone. That has to be curled by someone. And not only that, but if it's tied to the internet, it can be hacked. So kind of getting off subject, but my driven is whatever you want to get yourself involved to, always stay focused and move forward. As in when I went in the Marine Corps, I knew I wanted to stay in the federal government. I got in the federal government. I always projected what I wanted to do. Always conduct yourself in the position that you want to get into, not the position that you're currently holding.
Thank you, Wendell. I couldn't agree more with you regarding this having a sense of purpose, right, in the conduct of our work and choosing a career. Now, let's move to Monika. I remember you share with us some of your, the career path already, but definitely love to hear from you more about why or what motivates you to choose this IT career. Given especially nowadays, female and are underrepresented, right, in the IT career path.
Thank you, Nancy. So my story is probably a little bit different than most in that my parents directed me to join IT. While I did study IT in college and undergrad, after several years in operations and working transportation and retail, I just wanted something different. I always loved traveling, and that's kind of where the Peace Corps came in. And I just knew after I joined the Peace Corps, okay, humanitarian work was going to be it, until I realized the lifestyle that I like to live, humanitarian work doesn't really fund that super well. So, for full disclosure, so I just started thinking about other things when I got back to DC after, again, an amazing experience in the Peace Corps. I definitely plug it for anyone who's interested. But yeah, when I got back to DC, it was very much a time when a lot of unsettling as far as positions were going. The government had just experienced a shutdown. And so my parents were basically like, what are you going to do with this opportunity? And so I decided to go back into IT with my degree. And about a year in, my first position was supporting OSD at the Pentagon. So they say that's how the story goes. And how I ended up with Foreign Service specifically is because while I was enjoying what I was doing in IT, the travel aspect is what I was still missing. And I remember to a friend that I had met in the Peace Corps who was serving as a facilities manager. We have several specialist categories within the department. He said, why don't you become an IT specialist before? And I was like, oh, I have to do all the tests and all this stuff. He was like, no, because you're coming in as a professional, a little different. So I applied, thought nothing of it, and continued on. Similar to what Wendell said, any position I was in, I was focused in learning as much as I could in that position. I always looked ahead of what the opportunities were, where else I can support, where else I can learn. So I just gained a wealth of knowledge every step of the way. So when I actually did get an offer from the Foreign Service, it was probably a good year after I submitted my application. Luckily, since then, we respond a lot quicker. But that's how I ended up at the Foreign Service. It was just, I just kept learning in IT. And as I built on those skills, I also started to factor in what is it that I enjoy for the holistic experience of what I do for a living. And so that's what the department now affords me. As far as satisfaction and accomplishment, I think one of the things I've learned here most is that we do have a wealth of knowledge in certain areas, and we have the opportunity to share that and transfer that knowledge with others. And then while also gaining a lot of non-technical knowledge and cultural knowledge as far as what I do. So it gives me a balance of I can actually come in, do a day job that I enjoy, and then have experiences that develop my personal side as well. So.
Thank you, Monica. Definitely, I believe your story will be inspirational for all, especially for my student, the female student who don't think they would be good at IT. But now you are a very good example here to show them that women can also excel in IT career. Now, let's hear from Paul. What is your story? What is your journey to the IT career?
So we'll start from the very beginning, but I'm not going to try to bore the audience too much. So typical parents wanted me to be a doctor or a lawyer. I did 2 years of pre-med, was doing well, but I was taking computer science classes on the side, which I found a lot more enjoyable. So I just pivot to the great disappointment of my parents. And back then, the big net bubble hasn't come yet. So they're just like, what can you do with computers? And, so I was just like, I just enjoy doing this. So I went at it, graduated from USC with a bachelor's in computer science. I just applied for a lot of different jobs. And, the guy, I was actually working at a couple other contract positions until the county, the Department of Social Services called. And I was like, oh, that's a permanent position. I'll just do this for a few years and I'll get out, because government was never, to be honest, a forefront of like, oh, I'm going to stay in government, right? But going to government as a data analyst and finding fraud in food stamps and welfare. And it was a really interesting set of problems because they're just like, yeah, we have this, but we don't know how to find it. And I was able to help strategize like, oh, these are some flags that you may be looking for. Do we have data involving this? Oh, yes, it was not standardized. Let's fix it. So it was a really interesting set of problems, and it really engaged my, I really love problem solving. So it really engaged that, and that really clicked with me. So, and then when my boss took off to Los Angeles Superior Courts, he's like, hey, Paul, you want to do something really fun and start modernizing the court? And I said, yeah, sure. It's like, yeah, the first job is to get rid of these paper jury summons forms and actually have a website so people can actually register online. Yeah, novel idea at the time, because there was a lot of pushback actually saying like, well, no. People like paper, people like phones. No one's going to use the website, right? So there's a lot of pushback, but once again, went through it. Interesting set of problems. They began to realize the kind of different data points we could collect, and they're like, oh, this is really cool. Let's see what else we can do. And then, of course, the drop in the need of manpower to do this, that was also interesting for the CEO is like, oh, our budget for operations dramatically decreased after we automated things. So and I ended up just staying in the government because there are people there like that really care about how they serve people, and they just there's a and they're really struggling with like how to best serve the public. And it was really fun working with those type of people that really cared, and also solving real problems that I could actually see after implementing solutions. There's a dramatic change in how the court processes things. And when you see like a case go down from like 4 months to 1 month, and that's actually impacting people that are trying to do their business, that they're just saying we can't do anything until the court gets through the backlog. So to see that and see it happen, it's actually really, it's a great feeling. So I ended up never leaving the court, even though in my head, the government position was just a five-year stepping stone to something bigger and greater. And I've actually found a lot of enjoyment in doing it. So, throughout the thing, as I'm working through it, I just wanted to try and get into more management. And with IT, you're constantly learning. It's not just like, I've learned this from when I graduate college and I'm done. No, it's constantly like reading up on new technologies, reading a lot of white papers to kind of figure out where the trend is going, because you're trying to guess, because it takes time to move from one point to another. So you're trying to guess where things are going to be in 5 to 10 years, and you have to direct your resources to meet that point. So there's constant learning. And for that, I went back for my MBA once again from USC. And do you need it? No, but is it helpful? Yes. It's always great to increase your toolkit, so you can handle different problems. So and now, like as I mentioned, like it's been 16 years in the government, and like I said, I totally thought I would leave, especially after the MBA. But looking out there and looking at what I do now, I've learned that a sense of purpose and fulfillment is probably better than a lot of things that you can get. But that's my personal belief on the whole thing. But that's my professional story.
Thank you, Paul, for sharing this. Your definitely very insightful stories about the career, and especially as you mentioned that the technology is evolving quickly, and the people in this career, the professionals have to keep up with the latest technology, have to keep on learning, motivating. That's all important. Now, Mohamed, I know that you have been working in both public and private sectors. So now I turn to you to share with your career path, and also any insights about the difference between in the public and the private sectors as IT professionals.
Yes, thank you, Nancy. So I think I'm going to focus on why should you consider a public sector job. My colleagues have touched a lot about what the job is and what it means to them. I started my career as a student worker in the second largest media publication organization in the nation. And then after graduating, I became their IT director, and I was tasked, just like Monika, to travel around the world and establish IT operations for especially like war zones and hot zones. And it was very rewarding, but it was print media. So as a computer scientist, you want everything to be like touch screen and AI and ML driven. And that was, never the forecast for print media, unfortunately. So I was approached by a county board of supervisors, which is the equivalent to like the governor's office for a state. And they said, what do you think about doing IT strategy to transform local governments? Like, I'm going to try it out. And then when I looked at the county, back then, $29 billion budget, I was like, I'm going to be walking on fiber. This is going to be Disneyland for me. And the sky is the limit. So when I joined the county, I had the biggest cultural shock. Paul mentioned COBOL. Literally everything was COBOL, mainframe servers, copper lines, PBX and Centrix, like phone lines. It's like a museum, right? And I thought, I made my biggest career mistake moving to public sector. But then quickly, I could realize that there is an opportunity to do things and transform business, but in a way where it's going to be tedious and hard and takes more time, because for two reasons. Government is risk averse, and two, government never gets disrupted. It's not like private sector. No one will come and do their job better than government, and taxes will be redirected to them and government will be out of business. So that's why government does not change as fast as private sector. So I truly believe the saying of if it's ain't broken, don't fix it was invented in state and local government. But you need to show them why it's broken. And I quickly realized that I need to understand the business, I need to understand the policy, and I need to show them not only the missed opportunity, but the risk of staying with 1970s technology. And that quickly started to work, and we could literally transform the county. In 7 years, we went to 98% high density, virtualized hybrid cloud, consolidated 49 data centers with over 68,000 square feet of raised floor to 2 data centers. One of them is only 4,000 square feet. It's just because the footprint got much smaller. And it was an amazing journey. And then as the foundation became relevant and now you can do things at a micro level, I decided to go to a department. As an engineer, I want to build things myself. And I picked the department where no one would think innovation is relevant. So my second role in public sector was Parks and Rec. And people always confuse Parks and Rec with a show. I've never watched the show, but I can probably write like a couple seasons for that show. But the reason why I went there is exactly that. That's the sense of achievement I had, where people thought that technology is not relevant in government. Government is free electricity. It's all paper. You don't need technology. And even, more with parks, they'll think that you need turf and playgrounds. But I went there and I was able to partner with a lot of innovative technology partners. And we have designed systems that detects drowning using AI and machine learning, where we had kids silently drowning underwater. And usually, Parks and Rec and pool aquatic managers would put more lifeguards, but you can't see them. Those are kids who just faint underwater. You can't hear or see them. And we put underwater cameras and we drove those with AI and ML, and we had like proprietary watches given to the lifeguards, and there will be an alarm and they see where exactly the drowning person is and pick them up. And that was like a cultural shift. Everyone who didn't think technology, when I was telling people we can fix this with AI and machine learning, it was like witchcraft. Managers were like, get out of my office, you're wasting my time. But then when they started to see that this is real and it works, it changes the culture. And now we're saving lives. Another thing we did, we looked at trails, and we always have hikers get lost in trails. And we put like infrared fence using IoT, and we could actually render the shape of the person who went across the fence, the infrared fence, to see whether it's a coyote or a person. And instead of fire department looking for that lost hiker for 5 hours, we could reduce it significantly and could save them faster. And then I came to public safety, just like how Paul has been dealing with this for a while. I started here a little bit over 2 years ago, and there is this appetite to transform the justice system. So my sense of accomplishment, what makes me look forward to coming to work here every day, is those amazing lawyers whom are here who didn't go to private sector to make like 7 or 10 times more, but they came here to support those who cannot afford having a lawyer. And those are not the stereotype that you hear about, the bad criminals. Those are people who have mental health issues, have disabilities, are homeless, and they don't have a voice. And supporting them to help those people, divert those people, fight the overpopulation of prisons and the mass incarceration. To me, I guarantee you, there is nowhere in private sector you will get this sense of accomplishment. There's nowhere where you will have epics, not stories, to tell your friends, your nephews, your nieces, your children, your grandchildren. It's just makes me proud every day. What we do here matters. It touches on people's lives. And you need to always remember that 50%, on an average, 50% of the population in any state get their critical services from state and local government and federal government. So if you really want to serve your people, if you really want to make an impact in neighborhoods, in cities and counties and states, public sector is where you should go, and you will always be proud about your job and you'll love it. So I cannot tell you how rewarding. I don't regret moving from private sector to public sector. And I think you should seriously consider doing the same. I hope I sold them, Nancy.
Thank you, Mohamed. You have really shared more than I expected. So for our audience, you have learned from our speakers that there are a lot of career opportunities, right, in the IT profession with the public sectors. But as Mohamed just mentioned, what's more important that here in the public sector and the government agencies, you have more opportunity to make a big impact by using your knowledge, your expertise, and using the technology. That's very, very important to remember. And especially nowadays, we have all this new technology, the AI, machine learning, and decision making is all based on data driven. Now that's why let's move to Ryan to share your experience, and especially with institutional research, what motivated you to take this path?
Well, to go after my esteemed colleagues, especially Mohamed there, it's going to be a hard one, but I'll try. How I landed in institutional research is, I don't think anyone probably should take the path that I was on. Actually, I was kind of like Wendell, and I just want to acknowledge Monika and Wendell for their service, so thank you. I was a criminal justice major, graduated with criminal justice out of the CSU system. I was on the pathway. I had an EMT license. I was on the pathway to become, some kind of law enforcement with medical. Life happens, and I pivot. And I ended up I was working in healthcare, started taking some roles within healthcare, and just got into information systems. I was always analytical and just really curious about things. And that kind of led me into information technology, but a component of that was the analytics. And that's really where I kind of fell in love with the analytics. And so I ended up really leaving that role and looking for a role specifically on analytics. And that's how I landed within the California State University system. So for me, the path I think kind of chose me versus me choosing the path. But once I did launch into the CSU, I had taken various strategic steps in order to further gain my experience. For example, I specifically looked for so my master's is in information systems. But at the time when I got it, a lot of those the master's programs were in computer science programs or thereabouts. I specifically chose a business school. And because of that, I had kind of the business influence as well as, so it's more decision sciences rather than the actual syntax. Some of it I did learn about the syntax, But that really helped me not only be able to communicate the findings, but also more importantly, go back. So I became this individual that was kind of in between technology and the decision makers. So that was really interesting for me to kind of go through that. And kind of like Paul, I wasn't, I used this, my role at the CSU to get my master's. Wasn't planning on staying, but I actually ended up landing over at Cal State Long Beach, and that really changed my career trajectory completely. I was engaged, and just seeing the work that I was doing and seeing the students, that actually really gave me a sense of purpose, a sense of pride, and knowing how my work really went to helping students. CSU is the largest higher educational system in the United States. A lot of our students are Pell eligible. They're first generation. I'm a first generation student. And we are a system of looking at diversity and equity. So we're trying to build that. So being a part of that whole overall is very engaging and very satisfying. I laugh about COBOL and all that because I've experienced that as well. Most of my colleagues, when I got my master's in information systems, were all from psychology or sociology. So me having more of a different perspective was unique when I kind of came into this role. So that was really interesting. And now I'm working on an educational leadership doctorate. So the one thing two things I'll finish with is always thinking about continuing your education and, thinking about what I would call reskilling. There's always going to be opportunities to learn new aspects. I think Paul touched on that a little bit in the sense that, reading journals, being a part of I would call professional, roles or what have you. I think that's really important. The other thing I would say is what I really like about my role, especially working in the government, is that you got to think about the individuals I often work with. So you'll have, so I have deans that have, they went to school for their English degree, they got a master's in English, they got a doctorate in English, and now they have to be able to take what I'm giving them as far as data and be informed about the data. So I'm often, my dissertation is focused on the efficacy and anxiety of data utilization, because a lot of times I have to explain to individuals like how to use the data, how to apply it. And that's really where I get this sense of enjoyment, because I'm helping them make informed decisions to ultimately help our students and be successful. So that's one step. The other aspect is, I think as Mohamed said, government will always be there, but unfortunately the people leading government will be making changes. And the reality is we'll have funding that'll change. So we have to learn how to pivot on those, or what's the more important things at that time. So how do we apply those decisions to higher education so that we can continue to make sure that we have equal opportunity for students to engage in the system and earn their degrees. And then I think the last thing is, like COVID, you're always going to have those life things that will happen to you and now it's like, I can see myself for the next 10, 20 years, how has COVID, especially our K through 12 students, how has that affected our students, and what do we need to be doing in higher ed to prepare for those students to ensure that we are equitable in the delivery of higher ed. So the technology might not be changing, but our students change, our people change. And how do I work around that to make sure I'm informing the best I can? And I don't know if it comes across, but I absolutely love the role. I really enjoyed it. And I've had several opportunities to be a part of graduations. And I love each May seeing our students walk across the stage. So that's really important to me.
Thank you, Ryan, for sharing with us your professional journey to this career, and for your thoughtful notes. Definitely on serving our community, first-gen students. I think for all the 5 panelists, I really appreciate and I see something common is that you all take great pride in what you do, and you are also committed to serving the public service, and you keep on learning new technology, and then keep on upskilling and reskilling yourself, and I think that's important advice for anyone who want to pursue this career in IT. Now, let's look forward. All the 5 panelists have bring us with more than 10 years experience, 20 years experience in this career. But now, if we look forward to the IT, the industry and this particular career path or job market, what kind of perspective or vision you would be able to share with our audience in terms of the growth in this particular job market? What kind of specialty, IT specialty, will be in high demand, for example, in the coming 10 years, right? And now with the new profession of business analytics, what are the skills required, essential skills required for students, for graduates? And for the issues about the underrepresentation of people of color and the female in this career, what's your suggestion or advice to them? Let's continue with, since we just finished with first Ryan, let's continue with Ryan. So Ryan, what are your thoughts about the opportunity and the growth in this particular IT market?
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Deng. So for institutional research professionals, there is a massive opportunities. I get emails consistently about colleagues looking for staff members and being able to engage in a variety of different professions. The reality for us is we're moving into more of the machine learning AI world. But unfortunately, we just don't have the infrastructure there yet. So right now we're building that, and that just takes time. And and for us currently, we are looking to future and build that out. So in the next 10 years, I definitely see more opportunity within the field of institutional research. Before it was, I think the questions for us are going to evolve and change for us. So I think, having someone who I often will call data curious, who is interested in understanding what our students go through, what could be administrative barriers, what are opportunities of the campus that we can help our students engage. And there's just so many silos of data that I currently don't have access to. So, just bringing all that together, being able to evaluate, think about it, and be, like I said, be data curious and be informative for, the president, to the president of the university, to the deans, to advisors, so I work with a variety of different levels. So I think there's definitely opportunity within higher education as far as we grow. And like I said, I think, learning syntax, I've learned everything from COBOL to, Visual Basic back in the day, to now I'm learning Python and R. And what I've learned through all that is just where you put the semicolon. It's all fairly similar, but it's how this, what is syntax? But I gotta love Google. Google is definitely a friend of mine, and to be able to, in the GitHubs and out there, that really helps. But I think, our role, I think, potentially might evolve from actually doing the work as we engage in machine learning to really being able to understand what it's telling us and how to engage in the data to help inform decision makers and effectively communicate that out. So I would say your communication skills are very important. And then just, like I said, data curious, just to ensure that you understand what you are looking at and how you can convey that information for our students.
Thank you, Ryan. I think one of the important message we get is that given this big data nowadays, right? Definitely, we have to do to take the data-driven approach. But what's more important is how, as IT, either a student majoring in IT or later on become IT professionals, how we can generate insight from the data analysis, and how can you communicate the message, right? The key insight to be a good storyteller. That's very important. But definitely, let's hear more from our panelists. Mohamed, now let's turn to you. What's your perspective and vision about IT and the growth and opportunities and challenges?
Yeah, so to add to the great points that Ryan mentioned, I just want, especially the technology students, CIS and CS students, I want to tell you how lucky you are today in this time where technology is relevant and it's not pulling teeth to convince business that we are a strategic partner. We're not just a service provider. So you're entering the career, and I envy you because you're entering the career without that huge challenge. I just did a panel in Southern California here about COVID and what I think COVID did. COVID was the death of paper. For over a century, paper was the only and the main trusted partner for public sector. Paper never goes down, technology goes down. But when COVID happened, paper went down. And this is the first time it was this like huge cultural shift where technology organically became the front line of business. Imagine if there was no computer scientist who did video conferencing, what would have happened during COVID? The whole world would have been paralyzed. Schools, universities, hospitals, law enforcement, all of us could continue business as usual. I can tell you in my organization, I had 83% of our workforce work fully on March 18th, which was the day where Code Purple was applied and everyone was staying at home and working from home. So today, like now, entering a career of technology is very exciting, and I am super excited for you guys. I think COVID was it was devastating, but the silver lining is it was one of the best organizational change management experiences that I had in my career. Now, what I also want you to pay attention to, and I always tell, young graduates who apply to jobs to my organization, stick with what you studied. Sometimes it's very, unfortunate when I see a computer science graduate go apply for help desk. You should look into an app developer, an entry-level app developer. And if you're in CIS, you have, just like how Ryan is trying to keep up with languages and be relevant, you have to be fluent in at least 2 object-oriented programming languages, because the world is in light speed shifting to as a service. Physical servers and applications and switches, there is an expiration date that is set on those type of technologies and infrastructure, and that expiration date was like accelerated exponentially by COVID. So don't think Cisco switch, don't think, network administrator, think cloud and cloud native, think development, and you just have to be prepared for the new way of doing business. Everything is going to be as a service, whether the business will like it or not. Very soon, there will be no production for end users, for servers and applications. You just, the market will shrink, and it will be directed to like big companies like AWS and Microsoft Azure and Google, where hardware companies will focus on that marketplace, because they do have today, and they will have the majority of the market share. So focus on the future and focus on what you have studied. For CIS students, if you've done Java, if you've done C++, whatever you did, expand on that. Learn Python, AI, and machine learning, because I guarantee you, any job you get into very soon, you will be able to use that skill and build on it. So, maybe in government, not as fast, but I can tell you that it is inevitable. It's changing. There is a deadlines to move things into more online, because now government realized that we can't continue business without having services that is accessible from handheld devices using 5G or using Wi-Fi, and everything will have to go that direction in the next 3 years. The last thing I want to say is, for the population, the female population, we have done a lot of programs. We have done, Bias did a program with Cal State to bring students into the county and work, but also in high schools, especially for those of you who went to engineering and computer science, inspire high school students, female students, because we have to get to that level to steer more female IT professionals into the IT role. It is critical that we work on that, because the disparity is just unbelievable. And the ratio is unbelievable. So we got to make, every single one of us has a responsibility, whether you are a manager, whether you're a technologist, whether you're a male or female, you just have to inspire people to become technologists. And especially in the young, like female students population, your neighbors, your neighborhood, go to high schools. I do that. I, go to magnet schools and look for programs and talk to them, and sometimes bring them to do something in here. It will be very rewarding, and you will see them have that change of mindset where, you know what, I can be an engineer, I can be a developer.
Thank you, Mohamed, for your encouraging remarks and a very constructive suggestion for our students majoring in computers and IT, especially for highlighting the importance of building the pipeline if we want to encourage more female students or students of color to join the IT workforce. Now, next to Paul, what's your vision, what's your perspective about the challenges and opportunities and the growth in this IT job market and industry?
Wow, Ryan and Mohamed really nailed it. So I want to piggyback off of many of their points that they've brought up. First is Ryan being data curious, data driven. And I think even Dr. Deng mentioned being a good storyteller. Those are all skills are necessary. And moving forward, we actually, at the LA court, we've been hiring a lot more business analysts because they have the right skill set to dive through data and bring out be telling stories through dashboards and reports. It just basically says, this is the trend we're noticing. This is how we should pivot and move forward, and allow senior executives to make decisions based on those insights. So yeah, being data curious, knowing how to tell a good story, the storytelling, that's a soft skill. The data driving, that's a quant skill. So, you know, being able to marry both of them makes you a very powerful and effective component in this whole decision making. So that's that for sure. I definitely, when I hire people, I see if they can dive through a data set and tell me a story. That's actually one of my interview questions. When I ask people, I gave them a data set. I'm like, just tell me a story based on what you see here and see how they respond. Regarding the moving technology, Mohamed is absolutely correct. Even our network team, our hardware team, we're transitioning to cloud. And the simple reason is this, and this is a little bit more technical, more budgety, but the way government works is we get a set budget every year and we move forward to invest in data centers and so on. That's capital heavy. So it's always a large upfront cost that we have to put in. Versus a service, it's actually much easier for government budgets to accommodate that. And now that Microsoft and Amazon are jumping in with, I believe Amazon was doing it with their Jedi program and so on, we're actually more open to doing cloud services, especially now that they have government cloud where the data centers are guaranteed to be within the US and secure. Yeah, that's the transition we're doing. And we're actually trying to train our network engineers to learn how to spin up services on the cloud versus how to do it in a data center. So it's definitely a skill set that we're transitioning toward it. And, you know, obviously the people that have been there for 20 years, they're just like, well, I know how to spin up a server, like hardware wise, we need you to learn how to do it in the cloud now. So that's definitely a transition that we're going through, and we're really trying to encourage other people in our organization currently to do. But any new blood that comes in that knows how to do it, and that, like I mentioned earlier, that thirst for knowledge to always transition and move forward, because technology is rapidly changing. So what you're doing now, I almost can guarantee you, you're not going to be doing it 15 years or 10 years from now. So it's always a quest to learn more and advance, expand your skill set. And that's the key thing with education. A lot of people, like for programmers, I'm just concentrating on the programmers right now, but IT's a very broad thing. Don't think IT. I'm sure the students here know that, you know, IT is not just program. It's a wide set of things. There's business process re-engineering to see how technologies fit the current business workflows. There's that area. We desperately need those people. There's data-driven reports and data driving, and then there's developers, and then there's our solution architects. There's like IT is a vast landscape that there's different skill sets needed. But right now, concentrating developers, like a lot of developers go through boot camp, and that's great. You learn how to program that one language, and you can try to get no Siri, and you can get a job quickly. But what I found that benefited me a lot, like learning computer science at a university, is that they didn't teach us a language. They taught us the foundation. They taught us what object-oriented programming was, what data types there are, what memory flows, like those things that you don't need to do a job, but it's always great to have that underlying foundation that when they introduce new languages or new technology, it's actually based on those principles. So you can quickly pivot from one language to another. So for an example, when I came out of college, I only knew C. So web programming though, like, oh, I understand the concept here because it's related to these concepts that I learned in college. And then when you go to Python, same thing. You're just like, oh, it's just, if you were to compare it to learning human languages, there's nouns, verbs, adjectives. That's prevalent to all different languages, but they structure it differently. What you learn in English is different from Chinese, which is different from Russian, which is different from French, but you still have this basics. So once you learn the basics, it's actually easy to kind of pivot around. So that's the education part. And lastly, as like Mohamed mentioned about the whole paper shift, yeah, that's actually a lot of the applications that my teams are building now is to replace paper. And much like someone else said earlier, that we're not going paperless, we're going less paper. That's absolutely true. And with just the way how things have pivoted in the last 2 years, especially, it's just something that not only do we need people that will, like I mentioned earlier, process re-engineering, right? Because everyone has done paper for so long in a certain way. So we actually hired business analysts to come in, look at the current process and see how it can fit a more technology workflow. Like, oh, we can scan this, but where do we store it? Do we store it on servers on the cloud, or do we do it here? What are the pros and cons? What are the costs? So there's a lot of things that go into it that, as I mentioned, you just you have to be open and to different ways of doing things and know the different technologies available to do it, and that really helps. So those are the specialties that I would say that or qualities that you would need moving to the job force. And yeah, like we're even the court is even during the pandemic when we're trying to streamline operations. We were hiring like crazy because we needed more people to do the IT work. And like I said, not just developers and network engineers, but like business process re-engineering, business analyst, data analyst. A lot of it was a data analyst because no one at the court can tell a good story using the data sets we're given. So we definitely needed that. In terms of female population, I am glad that in the last 3 to 5 years, because I interviewed quite a bit for job positions within the court. And I'm glad to see there's been an uptick of female applicants that I've been interviewing. And that's great, because like, I think 12 years ago, I would get like 30 applicants and then maybe 2 of them were female. And nowadays I actually see like, it's still not 50-50, but it's definitely like 70-30. Like I'll see a good chunk. And my team is actually mostly comprised of females. I mean, I really just hire the best applicant that's there. And a lot of times, you know, so I encourage, like, it's not really personally, when I look at the resumes, you know, it's not, I don't look at genders or anything, race or anything else. I just look at their days, their qualifications, and I interview them and I ask them a set of questions, and I choose the best candidate. And it just I would say, like I said, like, since my team is mostly comprised of females, obviously they outperform a lot of the male candidates that I've hired. So it's definitely not. It's great to see uptick in more broad demographics, and they really bring people from different backgrounds, bring up different points that are always great to see. So you don't really want a homogeneous culture. You kind of want to get a little diverse. So different people put in different ideas, and you know, that's what makes when you're brainstorming a lot easier. Yeah, so that's my thoughts on it.
Thank you, Paul. And I'm very happy to hear that you see an increase in the female applicants for the IT positions. That's great to know. And I definitely agree with you that you know, building the foundational knowledge for IT career is essential. Right? Whether you're going to learn different language later on in your job, but the foundation is important. And also having both a quantitative skill set and a softer skill set, you know, have a combination of both will, you know, be a big part of your job you know, success as well. Now, since you mentioned about the, you know, increase in the female applicants for this particular career, let's hear from Monika. What's your perspective and vision about, you know, the
Thank you, Nancy. So my perspective thus far, it is very much still a male-dominated industry. However, there have been significant steps from when I started my career to present day to really engage minority and women in STEM industries. I think, though, specifically some of the challenges that we still continue to see, and I'll be brief, but are double competence, women having to prove their professional worth repeatedly. I mean, it can be sometimes a little overwhelming. Even when you have the credentials, there's a lot of times, and this will lead into my second point, that people just have this assumption that you do not know what you actually indeed do know. So that leads me to the idea of stereotype threat and implicit bias. Just being really cautious because sometimes they can be so subtle that even highly educated and very well-informed individuals can be subjected to it just because we're so used to seeing who we see as being tech, who we see as being IT, and understanding. I think Wendell brought it up earlier. He made the statement about just even attire. We have different, depending on where you started your career in STEM, you have a completely different vision of what STEM look like versus someone else. So being mindful of that and opening those doors. I would also say, specifically for women, now, albeit that it's definitely better in the STEM sectors, income inequality still a challenge. Women still do not, men still outpace women with regards to income. Now, I definitely love my income with the Department of State and my subsequent positions in the private sector. I think what I appreciate about the Department of State is that it's out there, it's public information. What we make is set. And so it gives us the opportunity and at least some comfort knowing that it is consistent across the board. And I think private sector still has some work to do there with bringing both women and minorities up to par with what the income standards are. And then I would also say one of the things is access to STEM, right? We all know that there's throngs of courses online. There's so much information, but in that sheer amount of information, it's also overwhelming. And if you don't know what you don't know what you're looking for. You don't know where to start. I think so and then outside of just the education piece, there's the other factors to access to STEM. My path to STEM is as a result of two parents who are engineers, where I had an opportunity that was, kind of helped me to get my feet wet. I think someone asked the question, like, how do you get your foot in the door? Especially for someone like myself that has clearance. It's not something you can just, sign up for. So having access, having those, that community, being someone who extends a hand to others in the community is very impactful. So those are just some of the challenges, but I think the opportunities that we have as those who are in the sector is being visible to others. This is one of the reasons why I do speaking engagements like this. People don't always know what they think a diplomat should look like. So for all intents and purposes, I'm a diplomat. And I think that in and of itself, and I'm a diplomat who works in IT specifically, is not something they're used to seeing. Knowing who those minority persons of color are, for example, Aisha Bao, Dina Pirat, Christine, who started Haitian IT Tech Summit. Those are people who are in the industry. They're doing amazing things. So representation matters in that respect. And having a support system. And when I mean support system, not just about the positions, but also big thing is work-life balance. We've seen this debate about going back to work versus not going back to work. We have to understand that minorities and women have different needs coming in the door. They're not always disadvantaged, but there are different needs. So for example, myself as a woman, I may decide I want to start a family. That puts me at a different disadvantage, whether we like it or not, it does exist. And so how do companies and organizations address those situations without either A, giving me more advantage, or B, removing advantage, right? Where do we find that middle ground? Paid leave, just as much it is for moms as it is for dads. Same-sex partners who have children, like keeping those things in mind and finding ways to make STEM more accessible to people who don't traditionally look the way we've always known STEM to look like. And the reason being is because, let's be honest, the panelists have said this over and over, we need people. We need people in almost every aspect of IT. I can speak directly from the department. They change their hiring simply for that matter. As most of us are aware, the USA jobs, they'll have opening and closing. Since I entered the department, they have had an open system for information management specialists because we do need people, and we need people who want to stay long term. Yes, it's a very rigorous process to get in, but as I can say, it's very well worth it. So I think those are kind of some of the big items I would point out, especially if we're interested in making it diverse and inclusive, and really seeing that growth of diversity of thought as well with future prospects in the sector.
Thank you, Monica, for sharing your insights. definitely there's still a lot of challenges ahead if we really strive to increase the the diversity and inclusion in this career. But definitely there's a hope, and also we have the role models like you here, and that's why. Now, finally, Wendell, let's hear from you. What's your vision, insights, and also a perspective about the challenges, opportunities in this IT industry and IT career?
So I can tell you, technology is the way of the future that we're going, and kind of dating myself, but I remember when I grew up, when it comes to someone calling you on the phone, if you're not in your house and your phone's ringing, you can't talk to the person. Then we went to the days of having a pager, and then getting off the street and then finding a payphone to call back. Now we're holding, $1,000 phones that we can do practically anything on the phone. You got to realize technology is growing, and it's growing fast. And anything we do, good example, there's computers in a refrigerator now, so, it's the wave of the future. Anything that you do technology wise, leaves vulnerability for people to attack. So you have to always have the backward plan. Good example I always bring up when I do speak engagements is Colonial Pipeline. Just recently this year, the little switches that they use at the gas lines, people hacked into it. So people in the southern eastern states were out of gas for 3 to 4 days. Now imagine that, you can't fill out your car, right? Not only that, we had a cyber attack when it came to JBS food groups, which is one of the biggest food groups for meat and pork production. So a lot of people in the States had supply chain issues for meat and food. And then lastly, the biggest one I always like to bring up is this Scripps Health cyber malware attack here in San Diego, California. Just imagine a hospital malware attack. Their website went down for 2 weeks. So their computer system was off. They had to divert all emergency patients to hospitals outside. They had to move patients around that were critical. All operations and doctor's appointments were canceled for the 2 weeks. Just imagine how that impacted your, San Diego itself. That's a huge, big deal. The bigger that we grow, technology wise, the more people that want to attack it and gain control of it. So I hate to say, it's the forefront. Technology is the future. At the same time, we have to have people that know how to think like their adversaries on how to fix and mitigate things, right? So good point. So I think Monika bring out about work-life balance, right? It is very important for everybody, depending on what position you get into is, I'm not an engineer, but my wife and my brother-in-law, they're engineers that work for the federal government, and especially my brother, who's a software engineer. When he gets into his coding mindset, you can't stop him. He just keeps on going, regardless, hitting his 24-hour time working. He just wants to make sure his project is good. But you got to realize, you do that too much, you're going to burn yourself out. So, a lot of agencies are looking at the work-life balance. Good example is our director, who just got appointed this year. She came from Morgan Stanley, awesome position that she went to. She came back to the federal government because she wanted to serve her country, and she believed in work-life balance. I can give you numerous examples throughout my career. I know people that worked high-tech and industries, and they're knocking at our door saying, you know what? I want to come work for your agency because you have more of a work-life balance that I can take care of. Because you know what? I want to spend time with my kids, and the government is really good focused on that. Again, like I said earlier, it's not paper less, it's less paper. So there's a very big push, and I believe it was, all the panelists, is COVID. It was always in place, but we were slowly getting there. But COVID actually said, you know what, we have to get there now. Good example is when you sign a piece of paper, people want wet signatures. Nowadays, they want your digital signature because it's more secure, that we know that, hey, without your digital signature, someone can forge your actual wet signature. So also other panelists brought up, when it comes to honing your skill and keeping up to date, everything we do in technology, just like doctors and attorneys, you always have to keep up what's current in these days. Like for us, you have to learn all languages, C++, you need JavaScript, you need to learn Python, because people create things in different languages, and you got to understand, but any platforms be very diverse. But that's just the way the future is. So, education plays a very big role. Again, I'm not an engineer by trade, but do I know a lot about computer stuff? Of course, you look at, especially human resources. We have to keep your records somewhere. So we have an IT team that's assigned to human resources. Same thing with business houses. They're like the little liaison between, IT and actually business. So whatever you go into now, whatever career field it is, they need some type of technology support. So this is just one big growing industry that, you should be proud that you got yourself in, because it's not easy to get into an engineering degree or a STEM degree. I can tell my son, when he first started applying for schools, they required a lot for you to have in order to get in their program. So you need to pat yourself on your back and say, congratulations, I made it. The other part is, it's rough to go through a STEM degree, but I can tell you, as a recruiter, when I see someone with a STEM degree, I'm like, okay, I can relate what kind of stuff he went through in order to get that degree. So it kind of makes yourself better than other people in different degrees. Not to knock other degrees, but we all understand there's a difference from a STEM degree major from another degree major. So again, especially when it comes to technology, it's thriving and just getting nothing but bigger and better.
Thank you for sharing the insights. So definitely that's, you pass a very important message about technology of the future, that the workforce of the future should be ready, should be familiar with the technology. And if we look around, the digital transformation is taking place in all different type of enterprises, whether it's public or private. And technology is supporting and enabling a lot of the work processes at work. Now, I think that brings us naturally back to this next set of questions. Is for the workforce of future, for our students, the graduates, if they are interested in applying for a position, IT career at your office, at your agency, what can they do to better prepare themselves? And what is the recruiting or hiring process like? And do you have training programs for the new employees? What is the early career look like? So if you could share your some of those insights or tips regarding those type of questions. And so we'll continue with you, Wendell. So for applicants who are interested in the federal IT career?
Well, I could first start off, and I think the whole panel will agree, it's very competitive out there. It is ridiculously competitive. What I can tell you is there's always three things us hiring managers look for. One is, your education, especially being a STEM degree, we will look at your GPA to see how you're grasping the knowledge that you're learning. Two, we're gonna look at what internships or part-time jobs you got available, because we understand school is considered a controlled environment. When you go work in an internship or for part-time, you're actually work experience working on real projects. Lastly, are you going to be a good fit for the team, right, and the agency? If you're not a team player, because we have tons of coders and tons of STEM, but you got to realize that you're not the only one working on a project. You're one part of the project, so it's very team oriented. And we understand that most STEM or programmers are kind of an introvert, but we understand to that point, but you need to learn how to convey and talk. Is when they start asking for updates on where you're at with your project, you have to learn how to voice your opinion to it. We already discussed a lot of it. Be very diverse in what you do. You know, if you got to learn C++, you got to learn JavaScript, you got to learn Python, try to learn as much as you can, you know, to make yourself better and more of a well-rounded type of applicant. I know the federal government is a little different when it comes to resumes. Private industry always likes to have short resumes. Here in the federal government, we look at more of it as an application. We can't assume anything. You have to explain things, right? You have to explain us what you know, especially if you're in school. Don't just list out your school. My best advice is to list out what projects that you got involved in that are very good at you. For example, I created a program that analyzed A, B, and C and cross-referenced X, Y, Z. That way we understand we know that you are grasping the concept that you're learning, you know. Not only that, just be very, very detailed when it comes into what you've done. Because at the federal level, we can't assume anything. That's my main thing too. And always reach out for anybody that you want to get hired by. They have a recruiter that their whole job is to talk to anybody who's applying to. Take the time to find the recruiter and then talk to them, say, how does this agency or this company likes their applications? You know, is it short-term? Well, everybody's different. So always be proactive on how you want to get hired. Understand their system, because you got to understand, you always have to tailor your resume towards the job that you're applying for. It's not a one-fit thing. You have to take your resume, look at what they want in the job description, and then find what you can in your experience to relate to that experience, to that job posting. That's the best advice that I can get, is that a resume is not one fits all. You have to tailor your resume towards the job you're applying for. And lastly, for the federal government, you know, welcome to our bureaucracy. It will take you 4 to 6 months to get hired. It's just the way it is. Depending on what security clearance you get, you know, top secret with all these special compartment information, it could take you 12 months. You know, it's frustrating when you're hiring, but I can tell you, once you get in, it's a very rewarding career.
Thank you, Wendell. Those are very, very useful and helpful advice. And I often hear the complaint from my students when they go on the job market is, well, I'm applying for entry-level position, but they require experience. How can I show my experience? And you actually have given us a very good example how to detail the project from school and from internship to demonstrate that experience. Thank you for doing that. So let's, Monika, what do you think? How can the applicants or the new graduates prepare better for the career like this? And any insights about the job?
Thank you, Nancy. So I'm sure we've all heard the quote, "Jack of all trades, master of none." However, I'll go deeper to the full quote, which is, "A jack of all trades is a master of one of none, but oftentimes better than a master of one." And the reason why I say that is because, as everyone has spoken, it is important that you do have some areas where you consider yourself an expert and other people consider you an expert, but you have to have a broader understanding of all the other areas that you touch or that you want to be engaged in. So it's not enough to just know a language, but how does that relate in the other aspects of what you're going to do? So that's really important. Technology is always changing, so be ready and willing to adapt. Right now, even though I'm an IMSer, I'm covering as an acting general services officer. That's what we needed right now at Post. And so my background in operations and project management has allowed me to kind of just fill in and still support. And you may find that happen in your area. A couple of things, communication, and I think Ryan said this earlier, communication, customer service skills are key. We are the people that are solving problems, which means that we're more than likely dealing with someone who doesn't know what's happening. And so we are that person that has to not only explain and handhold, but help them understand what we know and what we want them to understand. Own your skills development. It is going, yes, you will have a certificate or you will have a degree, but once you're in that door, you need to own your skills development, keep learning. Technology is ever changing. And so what you know from 5 years ago might still be relevant, but it may be its way out the door. So whether it's acquiring certifications or learning opportunities through peers and mentors, understand how the work you do impacts the business and the organization and continue to grow that way. You show that you are valuable to the company or agency that you're working with. And in that, they will also invest in you. It's a two-way street in that regard. So specifically with the Department of State, as I mentioned, we are currently hiring for information management specialists. If you go to usajobs.gov as well as careers.state.gov, you'll see those, the emails keep coming through. You'll see that information there. Interesting enough, we are actually hosting, that I will be doing one-on-ones with, a all virtual Department of State career fair, specifically targeted towards diverse candidates in STEM and STEM policy careers. That's something we haven't really touched on. I think Mohamed probably talked a little bit about it. Besides just the actual technical aspect of STEM, there's all the policy behind it. There's the laws, the mandates, you know, the FAMs, the FA, you name it, the acronym. So people who are writers, like there's places in technology that doesn't mean you're actually doing technology. So keep that in mind. That specific fair is Wednesday, November 17th from 11 to 7 p.m. Eastern. Wait, no, we're in daylight savings time now. I got to remember that. And you can check that out. Nancy, I'll actually put it in the panelist chat for you and you can share it with the group, but it is careereco.com/events/DOS. Right now, I would have to say that the department's stance on recruitment is really involved in identifying, recruiting, and hiring, of course, on merit, but also looking at the broadest pools of diverse candidates that we can find. I think a couple of our panelists mentioned creating a strong pipeline. We have a lot of higher levels that are on their way out the door. They're retiring. They've given their time and dedication to the US government, and it's their time now to kind of sit back and relax. And so we need to fill that pipeline up with very qualified candidates. The recruitment teams are based out of DC. They have a lot of diverse focused portfolios and about 16 regional recruiters. And we name our recruiters a little differently. They're called diplomats in residence. So if you see that, that's what they are. They're recruiters. They can't give you any insight to the actual test, so don't ask them about that. But they are there to engage undergraduate, graduate, existing professionals of just how to navigate that hiring process. As far as for me, as I mentioned, I started probably about a year after I'd worked with Deloitte. And I think Wendell mentioned that the process can be a little time consuming coming on board because there are a lot of background checks. There are a lot of, even for the department, we do medical checks before you come on board. So you have to get a medical clearance because again, we are the foreign service. So we need to make sure you will stay healthy when you go abroad. So that process does take some time. So for me, what my experience was, I literally applied and forgot about it. I applied, I submitted it, and I went on with my life. I kept building my skills. So when the call came, I was ready. And when I got on board, orientation was about 2 weeks. Everything's in Washington, D.C. And then specifically, IM training is 6 months. And that's if you don't get a language. So I was in D.C. for 6 months learning all about the systems. Information management specialist, we cover not just the IT system, but also radio and telecommunications, as well as satellite communications. So a lot of training, because one of the things for us is we have to keep the channels of communication open to DC at all times. That's one of our biggest mandates. So a lot of training, so I definitely appreciate that. And for me, as far as early in this career, it's really been about learning the Department of State. Like I mentioned, I've supported OSD, Department of Defense, with other branches. Department of State is one of the oldest agencies in our government. So really understanding not just the work that I have to do, but the expectations of working for such a well-established agency, and what it means for me as an IMSer and what I do in the foreign landscape, right? So yes, I'm in IT, but I still represent the US government as a foreign professional. And so I get to speak with different people. I still have those cross-cultural experiences. And then also we learn and share information about IT. I mentioned earlier about a panel that was held and learning about what were the challenges that the cyber unit is facing here. There's a lot of ransomware issues here, especially with the onset of COVID and a lot of people working from home, realizing that they may have needed more security on their laptops or on their phones. So it has been a great experience, and I hope to see people at the fair. Nancy, before I forget, I'm dropping that link in there for you. Give me just a moment. And so if you go to the Department of State site, I think it's really interesting. One of the things that they have is that there's 9 steps to becoming an information management specialist, right? You go, you review the vacancy, and really review the vacancy because it is a lifestyle choice to be in the Foreign Service. Your day doesn't end when you leave the office. I remember this from when I was in Peace Corps. You will forever be in a fishbowl because you are the American. Wherever you go, you are the American. So you are always on display. Some people may not like that. Other people love it. I think I've pushed it to my friends time and time again. I get to live in multiple countries. The department makes sure I'm safe, sound, a great roof over my head. And I also get to do work that is impactful. So just a few ideas, and be sure to check those links out. And good luck.
Thank you, Monika, for sharing that exciting and very thoughtful experience, and also sharing the link as well. Definitely, I will pass on those links to my students. Now, so we hear about the federal level, even though the application process is long and time consuming, but eventually it should be rewarding. Now, or at the city and the county city level, right? What is the process look like?
Thank you, Dr. Dang. Actually, the LA court is actually a quasi-state, quasi-county, so we're not city. But that being said, Wendell's advice with the resume, that is actually great. We rarely, all the recruitment's done online for us. I think it's governmentusa.com jobs. So there's no office that you submit your application into. You have to go through that portal. And so and I believe that has both the court and LA County jobs. So obviously, if you're going for Mohamed's area, that's also where you go. But yeah, so that's how you do it. And the resumes, personally, I like them short, but impactful. So I get like 30 or 40. I mean, it's a lot. So if you give me a 3-page resume, that's kind of a lot to digest. Obviously, entry levels are usually shorter. And when I look for mid-level to senior, they give me 3 pages. And really, it's a huge turnoff for me. And that's supposedly, because honestly, we have an HR system that filters through it before it gets to the hiring manager. So my best advice on the resume part to get through that part is to really look at the job description, look at the keywords and terms they're looking for. So they're saying preferred qualifications, be sure to include that in your resume. But once you do that, once that passes the systems processing, it goes to the hiring manager. So all you did was put in buzzwords, it's not going to get very far. So at that point, when you include those buzzwords, hopefully you included impact, like, oh, I decreased this by 50%, increase revenue by 40%, turnaround time decrease. So all those metrics, we're looking for metrics. And that really proves that not only did you do what you said you did, but you kind of understand the impact of what you did for obviously for entry level, it's a little bit harder. So yes, like Wendell said, like just list your school projects. I had an applicant that came through the door, and when I asked him a question, he's like, Paul, let me tell you a story. I actually did some data analysis for my fantasy football league. and here's my Excel sheet, here's how I project points. And he showed me a whole dashboard that he did. So it's nothing work related, but clearly if you know how to do this for something fun, obviously you apply that to other areas. So it doesn't necessarily have to be like, oh, I interned here and I did this. A lot of the stuff that you do if you do it for fun and it's relatable to the job, definitely put that in. So on that note, on your resume, I strongly suggest that you include your LinkedIn profile. I do look through all applicants. I look through their LinkedIn profile. I see if they have one and I go through there, because obviously if you took the time to make the resume and also work on your LinkedIn, you're a very detail oriented person in my eyes. So that's great. The other thing I would suggest is, and this is not only for developers, it's for data analysts, business analysts, or so on. Get a GitHub page. A GitHub is an open source repository where you can upload files, and not just programming files, everything. So I have a lot of people that upload GitHub of how they have processes that they've re-engineered, or I think someone mentioned to me like they were at fraternity and they had to do this. So here's all the documentation they had to like transition from or how they plan this event. So a lot of that stuff that I can see before I interview the person. And I also, it shows a level of effort and detail that the person went through to do the job. But yes, definitely a lot of the NBA, the fantasy football one was one. Another one was how using Python, they had showed a 3D mapping of different areas of COVID. And it's just like, oh, this is the stuff that I downloaded off the internet, this data set, and this is how I manipulated it. So it tells me they can tell a story, or they're trying to, right? Without a real audience in mind. So those are great things that you should include in your resume and also in your application. So yeah, and the thing with the government job website is that it looks tedious, and I'm sorry that we did it this way, but that's the way it is. You submit your resume, and all the questions they ask you before you upload your resume is basically what's in your resume. So they'll say like, give us your job description. Like, well, that's in my resume. Just put it in, because the resumes for the managers, but that portion where you type it in, that's actually for the HR department to help filter through the applicants that we get. So, and then much like what Monika said earlier about how long it takes. Yeah, you know, and it's not even the hiring manager's fault. I'm on top of my HR department to say like, we need to move quickly. The market's really hot for IT. We really need to move quickly. And even then, because of the background checks and so on, the fastest I got through was 4 months. And that was me hounding. I found the candidate within a week. We opened up I think we had a 2-week opening period. And within the end of the 2 weeks, I interviewed within the following week, like 10 candidates in a row. And I found the one I wanted, and then I pushed, and it still took 4 months. So, and you know, like I've interviewed plenty of times myself, and I hate it when I get ghosted. So, but unfortunately, a lot of managers, they're either busy or they don't like following up, but yeah, there's no communication to the candidate. So I ask you guys to not be discouraged if you don't hear anything back from us. Feel free to reach out. Then we'll respond. It's just that, you know, a lot of people don't respond back. But I was able, with that particular candidate, I did follow up with them like, hey, we're in this process, we're in that process. But I will tell you that is not the norm. So please be patient. Obviously, yeah, it's just the way the government unfortunately works in terms of hiring processes. But it is a lot of background check. The background check takes 2 to 3 weeks. We have to go through the DOJ a lot of the times. So Department of Justice. So just that is the hang up, the background check. But also don't, as long as you don't have any skeletons in your closet, don't let the background check scare you. It's not as, I remember the applicant says, I have a DUI. I'm like, okay, as long as we didn't kill anyone, I think we'll be fine. So, you know, just the background check isn't as severe as a lot of people seem to think it is, from my experience of hiring applicants. So during the interview process, yeah, you know, like there's whole workshops on how to interview, but I would just tell you like really briefly, like what works for me, like when an applicant comes to me, if they can if they've studied up on what I'm hiring for or what the court does. They're like, hey, I know these different litigation types and so on. It just shows they did some research. And they're like, I think my skill sets are good here, or I think these are stuff you could do. So to be very proactive, to actually come out and say, like, I've studied your business model, and this applies to any other job, not just the court, any other job. I've studied your business model and noticed this. I think my skill set can help you here. Because as a job applicant, it's not what can when you're interviewing to get the job, it's not what the company can do for you, but what you can do for the company. So you have to really showcase your skill set to say, hey, this is the stuff I do to help you guys. So I find, and that, like I said, that works not just for the government, but for any job you guys apply to. It's always like, oh, this kind of really looks like they want to help us, like, and it just makes you shine. And lastly, this is a personal pet peeve of mine. I really like thank you letters. I really like it when people reach out to me after the interview and said, hey, Paul, I had a really great time. Thank you. And these points that we brought up during the interview, I thought they were great. It just shows to me that they've got the communication part, the soft skill of communication down. So like I said, that's not saying I never hired anyone that didn't send me a thank you letter. And I'm not saying a handwritten one, just an email. But the fact that they put in the thought to do it, that resonates with me. So don't forget to send out a thank you letter, guys. But that's my advice for applicants that are interested in applying for the LA courts.
Thank you so much for all those detailed suggestion advice would be definitely very helpful for our candidates and for our students. And now, so Mohamed, what do you suggest? What are your advice for our students?
I think my colleagues here covered great points. I don't want to repeat some of the valuable advice they had. One of the things that I want to highlight is you should have different resumes. If you're applying to jobs, don't put things that are not relevant to a particular job. It's not one size fit all. And always remember to read the job requirement really well and really carefully, because before any of us see you will go through HR and they don't understand technology. They have a checkbox. And if you're not checking those boxes, we're not going to know you. We'll never meet you, right? So make sure that you pay very careful attention to the details of the job posting, and usually you will put that information on the application and maybe also add it to your resume. And I just want to reiterate what have been said. If a job requirement says that you should have at least, I don't know, like 6 months of working in an enterprise level application, you look at it as like, oh, I just graduated, I can't apply to this. No, you can. You've worked on senior projects. You were sponsored by an organization. The school was sponsored by an organization to do an enterprise level application. You worked in a group, put that in. That 99% of the time we check the box for you. I have this senior design program with Cal State. We bring students every year to like at least 10 to 15 groups of students. And the thing that I keep telling them is capture details about the work you're doing, because you're going to put this as your first job. And it's a 3-semester program. So they actually put 1 year of experience working in public sector. So do that. And the GitHub is a great advice. Have your GitHub, have your LinkedIn, put your code. I just want to tell you that I got my job at my first job. I was still a student, and some of my accomplishments I put is how I use microcontrollers to automate some of the chores that my parents gave me. And that was impressive to whoever was doing the hiring. And he was like, there's something special about you. I need to talk to you about those things. So put those, even if you do things for fun, I know you guys all like do things with microcontrollers and things like that. Put it in there, because this will show how you're eager to do, to do things and learn things. Last but not least, to strike a balance between a detailed resume and a short resume. make sure you invest in your background or summary that you put on the top of the resume. Put the most important points about you. And you can see a lot of good examples online. If someone has only 2 minutes to see who you are, that should be sufficient. And if someone really wants to go through everything regarding you and your knowledge and experience, they can look at the entire resume and put what you want to learn. One of the things I do when I hire people, I've been hiring people for a little bit now, and don't tell me what you did, tell me what you want to do. Because if you're so good at what you did and you love what you did, why are you looking for a new job, right? Show me ambition and show me what you want to learn, because this is where I, as a recruiter, will know that you will enjoy it and you will do great, because those highly motivated employees are the ones who want to learn new things. So don't be afraid to put things in there. It's not going to be a disadvantage. You're not going to say, I don't know these things. Say that I love learning about these things, and put some reasons why you want to do that type of work.
Thank you, Mohamed, for all those excellent points and advice. I think they are not only applied to our entry-level position or applicants, but for different level as well. Now, finally, Ryan, from the higher education environment, what are your advice and suggestions for our job applicants?
Well, it's definitely difficult going after all these esteemed colleagues. It's great advice throughout. So there's just a couple things I will say. Talk to 10 people about your resume, because you're going to get 10 different advices, and see what it applies. My thing is, just like as everyone said, you want to apply it to the specific job. Go back to some of your syllabus. In your syllabus, you'll see curriculum and the outcomes that were expected from those courses. So take those courses, take those outcomes, and see how you can find the different jobs. Build your different resume. You're going to have a different, suit or dress or whatever for each of those interviews, right? So it's the same thing. You're going to go through that. So that's one thing I will definitely say. The other thing, here at the Cal State, we don't have ping pong tables. We don't have a fridge full of food. But here's what we do have, and I'm a living example of it. I not only got my master's, but I'm also now getting my doctorate, all on the as an employee, free of charge. So there's just huge opportunities. And then the other thing about it too is, unlike Monika, where she gets to travel the world, I can travel up and down the state of California. I can go to San Diego State. I can go to Humboldt. I can go to Chico, San Francisco State. My benefits, everything stays the same. However, I get to be in a different environment, a different campus, and each of the campuses has a different perspective and serves a different population of students. And that's what's critical about the CSU, whether it's San Diego State or we're in the food belt of Fresno and Bakersfield and East Bay. Those are all, or Stanislaus, excuse me. We all have different unique students and how we serve the state of California. California definitely needs so many jobs, and we at the CSU are getting those producing students so that they're ready for the next wave of careers that are out there. So that's why it's amazing to work at Cal State CSU.
Thank you, Ryan. I need to interject in that we had a hard stop at 11. So okay. I'd like Dr. Deng to close us out, and I'll have the final words for the end of the tape. But thank you so much, Ryan.
CalState.edu.
Thank you. So thank you all. It's a pleasure and honor to meet all of you. I have learned so much from your story and your discussion and talk. And I'd like to commend all of you for such an insightful and thoughtful discussion. And thank you again for joining us. And I wish all of you the best of luck in your career and life. Take care.
And let's give our panelists some applause. You know, I know you can't see it, but thank you so much, Dr. Ding. You did a superb job. Thank you to each of the panelists. It was wonderful to get to know Paul, Mohamed, Monika, Wendell, Ryan. And then, of course, we want to thank Edward, who's the one that needs to shut us down and record this. Please, for the panelists, before you leave, if you want to put any of those links in the chat, if you wanted to offer your email or an email contact for students who are interested in your department, your agency, please put that in the chat before you leave. I'll be summarizing that with Catherine Hansen, who I also want to thank, in a follow-up email to everyone who attended. So they will get a link to this video as well as those links if they want to follow up. There's no obligation, but anything you share, I will make sure gets to the folks. So thank you for attending today on behalf of California State University, Dominguez Hills, SCAG, and the Volker Alliance. We appreciate your participation in this final series of the 2021 year. Good day.